Hi, it's Soyeon. Today, I'm very happy to start this new format. Every Sunday, from now on, I'll be posting a summary of the 5 biggest news of the week in East Asia. I hope you enjoy it. The first big news of the week comes from Singapore, involving China, Japan, South Korea, and indirectly Taiwan. The Shangri-La Dialogue, Asia's Top Defense Summit, took place in Singapore from Friday, May 31st to Sunday, June 2nd at the Shangri-La Singapore Hotel. This annual forum is organized by the International Institute for Strategic Studies and served as a platform for government officials, business leaders, and security experts from around the world to discuss key security issues in the Asia-Pacific region. The Shangri-La Dialogue provides an opportunity for numerous exchanges between representatives of more or less 50 countries represented. It features speeches, debates, and private meetings on the sidelines. This year, the gathering tackled issues beyond East Asia to Europe and the Middle East. We'll focus on the bilateral meetings between China and the US and between Japan and South Korea. China also took a firm stance on Taiwan and the Philippines. First, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Chinese Defense Minister Admiral Dong Jun met for the first time in 18 months. On the sideline of the dialogue, they stressed the importance of open communication to rebuild military ties and manage their increasingly tense relationship. During their 75-minute meeting, they discussed resuming telephone conversations between theater commanders and establishing a crisis communications working group by the end of the year. Their talks covered a range of issues including the war in Ukraine, the conflict in Gaza, North Korea's missile launches, and tensions in the South China Sea and Taiwan. Austin criticized China's military activities around Taiwan while reaffirming the US One-China policy and commitment to peace in the Taiwan Strait. Dong warned the US against interfering in Taiwan, accusing it of using Taiwan to challenge China. Second, Japanese Defense Minister Minoru Kihara and his South Korean counterpart Shin Won-sik held talks last Saturday. They agreed on measures to prevent later lock-on incidents and resume bilateral defense exchanges. In December 2018, Japan accused the South Korean destroyer of locking its fire control radar on a Japanese patrol aircraft, which South Korea denied, leading to a heated diplomatic row. This incident highlighted the long-standing tensions and fragile peace between the two countries. This time, the two defense chiefs agreed to set aside their differences and improve defense cooperation. They will follow the code for unplanned encounters at sea. This code sets rules for keeping a safe distance between naval ships and aircraft and highlights the importance of avoiding actions like targeting a vessel or aircraft with fire control radar. Both countries also emphasized the need to enhance cooperation against North Korea. Additionally, on Sunday, the United States, Japan, and South Korea agreed to hold new trilateral joint exercises this summer across multiple domains, including land, sea, air, cyber, and space, and to develop a trilateral security cooperation framework this year. Third, China's new defense minister Dong Jun took a firm stance on Taiwan on Sunday and indirectly criticized the Philippines. He reiterated Beijing's warnings against Taiwanese independence and international support for it, asserting that any attempt to separate Taiwan from China would be crushed. Dong emphasized Beijing's aim for peaceful reunification with Taiwan, but blamed Taiwan separatists and external forces for undermining this goal. He accused Taiwan's President William Lai of revealing ambitions for independence and criticized the US for supplying weapons to Taiwan. In response, Taiwan's presidential office spokesman Lee Won accused Beijing of misrepresenting Taiwan's position and using political tactics to prevent Taiwan's participation in the forum. Taiwan insists on maintaining the status quo and has expressed willingness to communicate with Beijing. In his speech, Dong also discussed maritime disputes in the South China Sea. He said it almost owns the entire South China Sea, contrasting with other countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia, which also have maritime claims in the disputed area. Amid the rising tensions in the South China Sea with the Philippines, Dong said certain countries emboldened by outside powers, indirectly referring to the US. On Friday last week, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. condemned maritime aggression in the South China Sea, indirectly pointing to China. The second highlight of the week is 2024 South Korea-Africa Summit. The two-day Korea-Africa Summit began on Tuesday, June 4th, aiming to strengthen economic ties and cooperation between South Korea and 48 African countries. This event marks the largest multilateral summit of President Yoon's administration and the first of its kind between South Korea and African countries. During the summit, leaders agreed to enhance trade and investment through various agreements including economic partnership agreements and trade and investment promotion frameworks. President Yoon also pledged support for Africa's regional economic integration efforts through the African Continental Free Trade Area. They highlighted the increasing importance of mineral resources crucial for future industries like electric vehicles, batteries, and renewable energy. To address this, they agreed to start a ministerial-level dialogue on critical mineral cooperation. South Korea committed to increasing its official development assistance to about $10 billion by 2030. Additionally, they will provide approximately $14 billion in export financing to help Korean companies expand their trade and investment in Africa. The summit also covered key areas such as infrastructure, digital technologies, education, climate change, food security, and overall security. With Africa's vast consumer market and resources, South Korea aims to increase its trade share from the current 1.9%. On the sidelines of the summit, South Korea signed nearly 50 initial agreements with African nations, including 2 on key mineral cooperation, 3 on infrastructure and mobility cooperation, and other agreements related to the Economic Development Cooperation Fund, which offers low-interest loans to African countries. Since Friday, May 31st, President Yoon has held bilateral summits with all 25 countries whose heads of state attended the event, which shows South Korea's commitment to deepening cooperation with African countries. A business summit continued on the second day of the summit, where 400 Korean and African government and business leaders attended. For our third news of the week, we're going to talk about the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square Massacre. Demonstrations took place in Tiananmen Square in Beijing between April 15th and June 4th, 1989. This political event took the form of a movement of Chinese students, intellectuals, and workers who denounced corruption and demanded political and democratic reforms. The protests spread to most major cities like Shanghai, Xi'an, and Wuhan. After several attempts at negotiation, the Chinese government declared martial law on May 28, 1989, so the replacement of civilian government by military rule and the suspension of civilian legal processes for military powers. The government mobilized the army on June 4th. The crackdown on the movement on June 4th, 1989 resulted in a large number of civilian casualties and numerous arrests in the months that followed. Several political leaders sympathetic to the movement were dismissed and placed under house arrest, including the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party Zhao Ziang. The government expelled foreign journalists and strictly controlled coverage of the event by the Chinese press. To this day, the subject of the Tiananmen event remains banned by the government and is generally not covered by the media. Search engines such as Google and Yahoo had to block out any disturbing keywords when setting up in China. The official term for the June 4th movement used by the government of the People's Republic of China is political unrest in the spring and summer of 1989. As the expression June 4th is taboo and censored, Chinese internet users have invented another May 35 to get around the Chinese internet censorship. On Tuesday this year, Taiwan marked the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square Massacre with various events including a silent prayer, art exhibitions, and a candlelight display. Taiwan is the only place in the Chinese-speaking world where a memorial is openly held. Exhibition artist from Hong Kong KG Wong said, "Taiwan is a beacon of democracy in Asia. So we have the responsibility of upholding this event since Hong Kong can no longer do it." Taiwan President Lai Ching-te emphasized the significance of protest movement while commemorating the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. On Facebook, Lai highlighted the importance of June 4th in recognizing the global commitment to democracy and freedom. He noted that 35 years ago, the world watched as young students across Asia, including Taiwan, stood up for democracy. Lai also highlighted the ongoing role of youth in championing change and vowed to keep the memory of June 4th alive to remind everyone of the hard-won nature of democracy. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party echoed live sentiment, praising Taiwan's history of activism and criticizing opposition parties for aligning with China. Meanwhile, the Chinese government increased security in Beijing and Hong Kong to silence those who would try to protest or commemorate the massacre's anniversary. Despite China's economic boom, social controls have tightened, especially under Xi Jinping's presidency. In Hong Kong, where Tiananmen memorials were once possible, a pro-Beijing carnival replaced the annual vigil and police arrested several individuals for commemorative posts on social media. In response to the suppression in Hong Kong, commemorative events have grown internationally with vigils and rallies planned in cities like Washington, D.C., London, or Brisbane. These global efforts aim to honor the victims and uphold the memory of the Tiananmen Square protest and massacre. Next, our fourth news took place in South Korea. It is about Samsung Electronics Union's first ever walkout. On Friday, June 7th, the National Samsung Electronic Union, shortened NSEU, staged its first walkout to demand better pay. This move follows months of failed negotiations between the company's management and the NSEU. The NSEU, the biggest of 5 unions at the firm with 28,000 members, wants an additional day of annual leave and transparent performance-based bonuses, in response to the company's decision to increase wages by 5.1% this year. This strike comes at a time when Samsung's semiconductor business is underperforming. Recently, Samsung replaced the head of its semiconductor unit to navigate industry challenges. Samsung Electronics said there was no impact on production or business activity. The firm said the strike fell a day after a public holiday and the number of employees on annual leave was fewer than on the equivalent day last year. NSEU official Lee Hyung-guk said the purpose of today's strike action is to have a meaningful conversation with management, and added that the union was preparing further action without providing details. The union, which has grown rapidly after Samsung pledged to end its practice of discouraging the growth of labor union organization in 2020, recently has held rallies outside offices in Seoul as well as outside a chip production site in Hwasong, south of the capital. Our final news story of the week is about Japan's lower house passing a political funds reform bill. On Thursday, June 6th, Japan's House of Representatives passed a bill proposed by the ruling Liberal Democratic Party to reform rules on political party funds. LDP's coalition partner Komeito and the opposition Japan Innovation Party supported passing the bill. The political slush fund scandal, which erupted in December 2023, stems from some of LDP factions having neglected to report portion of their incomes from fundraising parties for years and accumulating slush funds. Prosecutors estimate that at least 970 million yen is involved over the 5-year period between 2018 and 2022. The scandal has plunged public trust in the Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and his ruling party, the LDP. With this bill, Kishida hopes he will help restore some public trust before the upcoming LDP presidential election. Key points of the reform include lowering the disclosure threshold for fundraising party ticket purchases from 200,000 yen to 50,000 yen, making receipts for political activity expenditures public after 10 years, requiring lawmakers to certify their political funds reports with fines up to 500,000 yen for false entries. Although the reform bill aims to change the way political funds are raised and used and to enhance transparency, critics argue the law still has loopholes that allow for slush funds. Some opposition parties call for more drastic reforms, including banning corporate donations to political parties. Stay updated on all these topics and more with our daily news roundup on Instagram. It is an easy and effective way to keep up with the news. Check all the links in the description. Creating video content takes a lot of time, so please support us by leaving as many likes as you can. It really helps us out. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so. See you soon!